Everyone, welcome to the Rangers Reviews, a pre-match briefing ahead of Rangers versus Livingston in the Scottish Premiership. Rangers' second league game of the season, their first home league game of the season, obviously a few days on from the win against Servette, a week on from the defeat against Kilmarnock. Absolutely imperative that Rangers get 3 points today, and this is a team that Michael Beale has selected to try and achieve that, and I think it's the team that had you given most people the opportunity with the players that are available. There's a couple out there. Goldson's rested today. Ridvan's still not back in action. That aside, I think there's an argument that at the moment, on the basis of summer signings, this is Rangers' strongest starting 11. So let's go through it line by line. Jack Butland in goals, no surprise. He's Rangers number one. I think he started pretty well. Butland ahead of him. There's one change to the defence, which is Leon Balogun in for Connor Goldson. That's not an injury concern. It's purely because Goldson, obviously coming back from injury, hasn't played much in pre-season, and he is rested with a view to the game on Tuesday in Geneva. Important to have him fit and ready. It's the same for Ryan Jack, who obviously played the majority of Tuesday's game. He needs to be managed. His minutes need to be managed for Goldson. He's not played any minutes in pre-season, and he's come back and played, 290 minutes in a row. So if you're going to play 490 minutes in the space of about 10 days, I think that's a big ask for someone coming back from what's been a relatively long-term injury. It wasn't a couple of weeks, it was about 10 weeks. So Goldson is not in the squad. Leon Balogun comes in to play in the centre of defence alongside John Soto. Tavernier Barisic continue at fullback. I kind of thought you might see Dujon Sterling come in there today. I guess the argument would be that although Sterling is pretty two-footed, if you look at the rest of the team, there's no other left-footers really, aside from Sam Lammers, who's obviously quite two-footed. There's no real left-footers in that team, so maybe it's just about providing that balance. In midweek, we saw Rangers, as is quite often the case when they play Barisic out on the left, prioritise a lot of the build-up play on the right, with a lot of bodies there. I'd imagine that Cantwell will fulfil that same role he did in midweek, which is kind of dropping into the left-back spot and trying to control play and dictate play ahead of what will be, I'd imagine, quite a robust defensive setup from Livingston. He's in the midfield with Nico Raskin and Jose Cifuentes. Cifuentes comes in to make his debut not long after arriving at Ibrox, but he obviously has played a fair chunk of the MLS season, so it makes sense to throw him in right away, I think. And if you look at the profile of that midfield, I feel like every time we've spoken about a team before a game in the last year, has been the discussion of, is the midfield too conservative? You need balance behind the ball in the team, absolutely. But I think if you look at what type of game it's going to be today, then Rangers should have sufficient defensive cover with that type of midfield. They're going to need a lot of runs beyond. I think Cifuentes will be the highest of the midfielders. Raskin, we know, can dribble and carry with the ball, and he takes risks playing in that number 6 position. Todd Cantwell, I think what you'll see him do, similar to midweek, is try and control the play, come off the left side, and get on the ball ahead of the opposition's block. I put a piece out about it on, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. And I think the predominant thing that stood out for me watching Cantwell on Wednesday is not only is he, at the moment, I think for me, Rangers' best player, he's a real heartbeat of this team. And there was some discussion, as we've discussed on the videos a few times, has he lost his best position with Sam Lammers in there? But I don't think it's so much about necessarily his position, but his role in the team. And if he's got, again, that free role to go and make things happen, whether it be in the middle of the defenders, as it was for the second goal, whether it be right up at the top end of the pitch and winning a penalty, as it was for the first goal, you definitely need Todd Cantwell in your strongest Rangers starting 11. So no surprise to see him in there. And the front three unchanged, a wise move for me, because if you look at the game, watching it back on Wednesday, there's a lot of promising moments that existed between the three of them, but clearly it's going to take time for them to build relationships with one another. And not only are they all new to one another, but they're all new to the club in that front three: Sam Lammers, Danilo, and Cyril Dessers. So I think it makes sense to I guess bid for that continuity at the top end of the pitch, maybe try and change things, keep certain players fresh depending on what type of game it is, how the score is sitting after an hour. I'd imagine that Dessers, whether he plays right on the top lane with Danilo or not, Danilo was the one who kind of peeled off a little bit more and started from the left-hand side on Wednesday in midweek. He's still looking for his first Rangers goal, whereas Cyril Dessers got his in midweek against Servette. I'll just read the bench to you, which is McCrory, Lundstrom, Hadji, Matondo, Seamat, Dowell, Sterling, Roof and King. Good to see Kemar Roof back in there. No Tom Lawrence today, but you've got, I guess, a number of attacking options. Hadji, someone who hasn't seen a lot of minutes so far this season, only 2 games, and of course Kemar Roof. I thought he looked very sharp when he came off the bench against can't remember who it was in pre-season. I think it might be Newcastle. It was Hamburg the second half against Hamburg. And Dujon Sterling, who Michael Beale was speaking about in after his press conference yesterday, you can read those quotes on the website. Said he's been training like a steam train, was the phrase that he used. Hopeful to see him at some point today and get him somewhat up to speed after missing a bit of pre-season. Let's get through some of the comments. George, member of the channel, says much more attacking. He goes for 4-1. Who cares, saying good looking team and bench looks quite well balanced. And Richard, other than Goldson, that's our best starting 11. The debate about both fullbacks aside, obviously it's important that while Rangers are still gelling, and it's going to take time for them to, I'm sure, show their best face with all these new players in the building. But that's a completely new front six to when Michael Beale walked into the club. The back four, not so much. Obviously, Liam Balgin came back to the club in the summer. His first competitive start since he made the return to Rangers, came up the road from QPR. But if you include Jack Butland in that complement as well, 7 new signings from January onwards. You've obviously got Dowell on the bench. You've got Sterling on the bench as well. Real good options for Rangers. And if you look at that front six, you've got so many different types of profiles and players in there. You've got the likes of Lammers and Dessers who can maybe play with the back to goal a little bit more. Campbell, who I think will try and get on it and dictate it a bit. Raskin, who'll drive the team forward. He can also really complement the attack as well. He played higher up the pitch in midweek, probably returns to the base midfield today. And Jose Cifuentes, the first real sighting we're going to see of him in a Rangers shirt. He obviously came off the bench for about 15 minutes, and I don't know how much you can conclude from that, but we know that he's sharp. We know that he's fit because he's played all those games for LAFC, and I think personally it's a real positive that Michael Beale wants to get him into the starting 11 quickly. It's important for him, in my opinion, that he gets these new signings quickly become the face of his new Rangers. And if you look at the profile of that, not only the front three but the midfield three as well, that's more what I think is necessary for a game like today, where Livingston will be trying to limit space, close off the pockets that Rangers can play in, slow the game down naturally and keep it tight and try and nick something. A lot of games this season at Ibrox will follow that course in different ways. Teams are going to not all do the exact same thing. But you need midfielders who are going to unsettle that by Cantwell's going to commit players. Cifuentes, I think, can do that as well. But he's going to run beyond, and he's going to add a real goal threat to the team as well. Steely FM says, happy with the team. Obviously, Jack and Goldson with the knocks are being kept for midweek. Chris as well, happy with the team, as is Hugo Bear. George Thompson, much more attacking today, 4-4-2 Diamond Jack. I think Rangers' shape on the ball will take up a lot of different forms. Off the ball, you'd imagine they'd always been some variation of a 4-3-3. But in these games today, this is arguably I'd presume that the toughest type of game sometimes to coach a team, because you need to set the tempo. Unlike the first half of midweek, where there's space and there's the ability to hit opposition teams in transition, it's all about trying to create space first before you create chances. But again, if you look at that profile of midfield, without one of Jack and Lundstrom in there, and Ryan Jack thought had a pretty good game in midweek, you definitely have the profiles to go and unsettle that Livingston block. I thought, actually, watching back the game on Wednesday as well, Lammers, although he had that big miss, I thought firstly he was excellent off the ball. The entirety of the front three were, and that's probably an underrated thing if you compare it to last season. But this is going to be his first chance at Ibrox in a league game where space maybe isn't as much at a premium. Michael Beale again in the papers this morning was speaking about perhaps needing a Ryan Kent replacement. I think Lammers is the closest profile of player to Kent in that he can commit a player and go by him and do a couple of step overs and outplay one-on-one. Cantwell can do it in a similar way, but maybe not the exact same type of profile of player. I think he'll be really important today, and as well as that, you've got 2 number 9s in the box with hopefully other people arriving, whether that be Tavernier at the back post, if Fuentes getting into the box, Cantwell contributing as well. Rangers should have enough attacking profiles in there today. I guess for them it's all about going on today and putting on the type of performance that builds expectation ahead of the second leg on Tuesday night in Servette, but also gets their league campaign really off to a start after the disappointment of last week. We will be with you right throughout the game. We're going to be live afterwards, myself and you, and after the press conference, talking about the performance, talking about what Michael Beale had to say. We'll have our instant match analysis, we'll have Twitter updates, absolutely everything. So do keep up to date with us on our socials. Enjoy the game wherever you're watching it from. Thanks for joining me